Hey everybody, how you doing? Today we're going to talk about a rather famous lady whom you're all probably familiar with, Edith Bolling. That's right, Edith Bolling, B-O-L-L-I-N-G. What do you mean you never heard of her? Of course you have. Well, let's read about her so you can refresh your memory. Born on October the 15th of 1872, Edith Bolling was a direct descendant of Pocahontas and John Rolfe. She was raised in Wytheville, Virginia, and married Norman Galt, a Washington jeweler. They lived happily until Norman died of the influenza in 1908, leaving Edith a widow at age 35. Know where she is now? No? You still haven't figured out who she is? Well, let's carry on. One of Edith's close friends, Helen Bones, was a cousin of Mr. Wilson. In March 1915, Edith and Helen stepped out of an elevator, both of them muddy from a walk. By chance, they met the recently widowed Mr. Wilson and his friend and physician, Dr. Cary Grayson. On that soggy afternoon, Edith joined Mr. Wilson for tea. Almost immediately, Wilson was drawn to Edith's charm and intellect, and by the end of April, she was dining at Mr. Wilson's home on a nightly basis, enjoying intimate conversations about politics and world concerns. On May 4th, 1915, a shocking 2 months after they met, Mr. Wilson proposed. Do you know who she is yet? Edith Bolling. Put your thinking caps on, no Googling. I saw you reaching for the keyboard to Google. Can't do that. Let's see if you remember who she is yet. Marriage and war. Following their marriage on December 18th, 1915, Edith's political partnership with Mr. Wilson continued, perhaps beyond the lines of propriety. In fact, as the United States became involved in the Great War, Edith coded and decoded confidential messages, enjoying direct access to classified information. Now, do you know who she is? No? Still not? Okay, let's carry on. After World War I ended on November 11th, 1918, Edith shared Wilson's enthusiasm for the Treaty of Versailles and his proposed League of Nations to maintain world peace. However, the Senate refused to ratify the treaty without several changes. Now, do you know who she is? That's right. Edith Bolling married President Woodrow Wilson. So she was the First Lady of the United States under Woodrow Wilson. Wilson refused to compromise. In September of 1919, he embarked on a 10,000-mile whistle-stop tour of the country to promote the League. But extreme exhaustion debilitated him between Pueblo, Colorado, and Wichita, Kansas. Edith, along with Dr. Grayson and Secretary Joseph Tumulty, canceled the rest of the tour and rushed Wilson back to Washington. On October 2nd, Edith found Wilson on the White House bathroom floor. He'd suffered a debilitating stroke that rendered the left side of his body paralyzed. The shroud of secrecy. Late that afternoon, Wilson lay nearly lifeless, but according to Edith's memoir, the words of Dr. Francis Durkham offered assurance. Although Wilson's body was maimed, his mind was clear as crystal. While Durkham recommended that Wilson not resign from office, he warned Edith that Wilson might be guarded from stress and unnecessary decisions. So Edith became Wilson's gatekeeper and spokesperson. Very few people besides Grayson and Tumulty were allowed in Wilson's room. Meanwhile, Grayson told the public that the president was suffering from nervous exhaustion. Rumors began to fly as the public demanded answers. Had the president become a drooling, babbling infant? Was he actually suffering from venereal disease? Political enemies accused Edith of running a petticoat government. Other critics called her the presidentess. While Edith took over many routine duties of government, she maintained that Wilson was in control of major decisions. She defined herself as a steward. In my memoir, she stated, I myself never made a single decision regarding the disposition of the public affairs. The only decision that was mine was what was important and what was not. The very important decision of when to present matters to my husband. According to some, this was equivalent of running the country. But there was no evidence that she contradicted Wilson. Even when the treaty was heading for defeat in November of 1919, she obeyed her husband's emphatic murmurs that compromise would be dishonorable. In December 1919, the shroud was lifted. Edith allowed Albert Fall, a Republican senator and political foe, to enter Wilson's room to discuss a crisis in Mexico. Carefully covering his weakened left side, Edith helped present the bedridden Wilson in his best form. Wilson's appearance, intelligence, and wit convinced the senator and other leaders that he was still capable of leading the nation. Wilson finished his term in 1921 and retired in Washington, D.C. He died on February 3, 1924. During her long widowhood, Edith promoted the legacy of her husband by publishing My Memoir, that's the name of her book, in 1939, and releasing Wilson in 1944, a film biography in which she held full control of the script. Edith died on December 28, 1961, the 105th anniversary of her husband's birthday. The truth of Edith Wilson's finely crafted memoir was questioned when documents revealed that Doctors Durkheim and Grayson were fully aware of the severity of Wilson's stroke and his immediate mental impairment. Furthermore, Grayson's private correspondence indicated that Edith would not allow those details to be released to the nation. If Wilson's true condition had been revealed in the weeks following the stroke, Wilson likely would have been replaced by Vice President Thomas Marshall. Edith's harshest critics believe she secretly may have changed the course of history, speculating that if Marshall had become president, he may have chosen to negotiate a modified version of the League of Nations that included the United States. So there you go. Now you know who Edith Bolling was. She was the wife of President Woodrow Wilson and First Lady, and some jokingly, tongue-in-cheek, say, the first woman president of the United States. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed today's little story, and we'll see what we can come up with for next week. Something interesting, I'm quite sure. And I know that Cousin Ralph is working on his story for our contest. So be sure to stay tuned to find out more about that. Alrighty, now you all want a groaner. Well, there was a young couple who were madly in love with each other. And one day, while discussing their future plans and different things, the young lady looked at her loving boyfriend and said, "Do you love me?" He says, "Certainly, sweetheart, I love you with all my heart." And she says, "Do you love me enough that you'd be willing to die for me?" And he looked at her and he said, "No, mine is an undying love." Well, there you go. They are called groaners for a reason. Have a great week and weekend, and we'll see you next week. Until then, take care, stay safe, and God bless.